The thunderous sound of galloping hooves broke the afternoon stillness as Elijah Davidson raced his chestnut stallion down the dusty main street of Ukiah, California. It was the spring of 1878, and trouble had found its way to the small but growing settlement nestled in Mendocino County. As the newest deputy in town, Elijah had been tasked with chasing down the infamous Harmon brothers who had just robbed the local bank and were now headed for the hills with 2 hostages. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he pushed his horse harder. At 32, Elijah was no stranger to pursuit. After fighting in the latter years of the Civil War as a young man, and spending nearly a decade as a ranch hand and occasional bounty hunter throughout the territories, he'd seen his share of desperate men. But today felt different. The bank teller had mentioned a woman and child had been taken, and something about that twisted his gut more than usual. "Davidson," Sheriff Miller's voice called from behind. "They're heading toward the Douglas homestead. Cut through Miller's Creek and you might head them off." Elijah gave a quick wave of acknowledgement and veered his horse east toward the creek bed. The Douglas homestead. He knew it only by name, a widow who had moved to the area less than a year ago with her children. He'd caught glimpses of her in town, always surrounded by little ones, her copper-colored hair visible beneath her bonnet, but they'd never exchanged more than passing glances. The creek came into view, and Elijah urged his horse into the shallow water, grateful for the shortcut. His thoughts remained focused on the innocents caught up in this mess. He'd seen too many good folks hurt by men whose moral compasses had long since broken, and he'd be damned if he'd let it happen again on his watch. As he emerged from the creek bed, the Douglas homestead appeared on the horizon, a modest cabin with a small barn and corral, sitting on a plot of land that showed signs of careful tending despite limited resources. Smoke rose from the chimney, and Elijah could see figures moving frantically around the property. His heart pounded harder when he spotted the Harmon brothers' horses tied to the fence post. Drawing his Colt revolver, Elijah slowed his approach and dismounted at the edge of the property. The sound of a child crying drifted through the air, followed by angry male voices. With practiced stealth, he moved toward the cabin, keeping low and using the sparse vegetation for cover. "I told you, I ain't got no money here," a woman's voice, strong despite the fear evident in its tremor. "Take whatever food you want and leave us be. Shut that brat up or I'll do it myself." One of the Harmon brothers snarled. Elijah reached the side of the cabin and peered through a window. Inside, he could see a woman standing protectively in front of 3 children of varying ages. Her face was set in determination, despite the revolver pointed at her by the younger Harmon brother, while the elder rummaged through her belongings. "Madam," the elder Harmon sneered, "we know the bank's been giving loans to settle this land. So either you've got cash stashed somewhere, or you've got something worth taking." The woman, Mrs. Douglas, Elijah presumed, stood straighter. "I have nothing but these children and the roof over our heads. The bank owns more of this place than I do." Elijah assessed the situation quickly. 2 armed men, a woman, and 3 terrified children. The front door was his only viable entry point, and he'd need to time his move perfectly. Circling around to the front, he waited for the right moment. "Check the barn," the elder Harmon instructed his brother. "Maybe she's hiding something out there." As the younger brother headed for the door, Elijah seized his opportunity. The moment the outlaw stepped onto the porch, Elijah pressed his revolver against the man's back. "Drop your weapon, Harmon," he ordered in a low, steady voice. The outlaw froze momentarily before attempting to spin around. Elijah struck him hard with the butt of his gun, sending him sprawling unconscious onto the wooden planks. The commotion alerted the elder brother, who appeared in the doorway with his gun raised. "Let them go, Harmon," Elijah demanded, taking cover behind a support post. "Sheriff's on his way with a posse. There's no way out of this." "Then I've got nothing to lose, do I?" Harmon replied coldly, stepping back into the cabin. A child's scream pierced the air, and Elijah felt his blood run cold. Without hesitation, he burst through the door to find Harmon holding the smallest child, a girl no more than 4, with his gun to her head. The woman and the other 2 children huddled together against the far wall, terror etched on their faces. "Put down your gun, deputy, or the little one gets it," Harmon said with cold calculation. Elijah locked eyes with Mrs. Douglas. Her face was pale with fear, but he saw something else there: trust, or perhaps hope that he could save her children. It was enough. In one fluid motion, Elijah dropped to one knee and fired, hitting Harmon's shoulder. The outlaw howled in pain, his grip loosening enough for the little girl to break free and run to her mother. Before Harmon could recover, Elijah was on him, driving him to the floor and wresting the gun from his hand. A swift punch rendered the outlaw dazed, and Elijah quickly bound his hands with a length of rope from his belt. "Are you hurt, madam?" "Children?" Elijah asked, his breathing heavy as he secured the prisoner. The woman was checking each child thoroughly, her hands trembling but determined. "We're unharmed, thanks to you, deputy." Her voice was soft but steady. "I'm Dahlia Summers. These are my children, Thomas, Lily, and Emma." Elijah nodded to each of them, noticing the boy couldn't be more than 10, the middle girl perhaps 7, and the little one he just rescued around 4. "Deputy Elijah Davidson, madam. Sheriff Miller will be along shortly to take these men into custody." As if on cue, the sound of approaching horses signaled the sheriff's arrival. Elijah dragged the still unconscious younger Harmon into the cabin and kept his gun trained on both brothers until Miller and 2 other men entered. "Good work, Davidson," Miller said, surveying the scene. "Mrs. Summers, are you and your young uns all right?" "Yes, Sheriff," she answered, still holding the smallest child close. "Your deputy arrived just in time." While the sheriff and his men secured the prisoners, Elijah took a moment to truly look at Dahlia Summers. She was younger than he'd initially thought, perhaps in her late 20s, with striking green eyes that stood out against her pale skin. Despite the ordeal, she carried herself with dignity, comforting her children while maintaining a brave face. "You showed remarkable courage, Mrs. Summers," Elijah said quietly as the sheriff led the Harmon brothers outside. A faint smile touched her lips. "When you have children to protect, Deputy Davidson, courage isn't a choice." She glanced around at the disarray the outlaws had left. "Though I admit I'm not looking forward to putting everything back in order." "Let me help," Elijah offered, already moving to right an overturned chair. "It's the least I can do." Dahlia looked as though she might refuse, but then her shoulders relaxed slightly. "Thank you. That would be most appreciated." As Sheriff Miller departed with the prisoners, promising to return the next day for statements, Elijah remained behind to help the Summers family restore order to their modest home. The children, initially wary of the tall stranger, gradually warmed to him as he worked alongside their mother. Thomas, the eldest, watched him with cautious interest. "Have you shot many bad men, deputy?" "Thomas," Dahlia admonished, looking mortified. Elijah smiled gently. "Only when necessary, son. A gun should be the last resort, not the first." "But you're fast," the boy persisted. "I saw how quick you moved." "Being fast isn't as important as being careful," Elijah replied, setting a jar of preserves back on its shelf. "And knowing when not to draw at all." As the afternoon stretched into evening, Dahlia insisted on preparing a meal to thank him. While she worked at the stove, Elijah found himself entertaining little Emma by whittling a small wooden horse. much to the child's delight. There was something peaceful about sitting at this kitchen table, the trauma of the day giving way to simple domesticity. "You're good with children," Dahlia observed as she placed a steaming plate of beans and corn bread before him. "Do you have any of your own?" Elijah shook his head. "No, madam. Never found the right time or the right woman." "Well, these three are my whole world," she said with undisguised love as she looked at her children gathered around the table. "They're what keeps me going since their father passed." "I'm sorry for your loss," Elijah said sincerely. Dahlia nodded in acknowledgement. "Robert died of fever 2 years ago in Oregon. We came here for a fresh start." "That takes courage," Elijah commented, "moving to new territory with 3 young ones. Like I said, deputy with children, you find courage you never knew you had." After the meal, as dusk settled over the homestead, Elijah knew he should return to town. Yet he found himself reluctant to leave, concerned about the family's safety. "I could ride back at first light to check on you folks," he offered as he collected his hat. "Make sure there's no more trouble." Dahlia walked him to the door, her children already being tucked into bed in the small adjoining room. "That's very kind but unnecessary. We've managed on our own this long." Elijah nodded, respecting her independence. "Nevertheless, I'll be passing by tomorrow with the sheriff. Perhaps there's something I could help repair while I'm here. I noticed your corral fence has seen better days." A genuine smile spread across her face. "Deputy Davidson, are you offering your carpentry skills along with your protection?" "I'm handy with more than just a gun, Mrs. Summers," he replied with a slight grin. "And please call me Elijah." "Then I'm Dahlia," she responded. "And yes, if you're offering help with the fence, I won't refuse it. It's hard to keep up with everything on my own." With a tip of his hat, Elijah mounted his horse and rode back toward town, glancing back once to see Dahlia still standing in the doorway, her figure illuminated by the warm glow from within. Something about her and those children had stirred feelings long dormant in his heart, a desire to protect, to help, to be needed. True to his word, Elijah returned the next morning with Sheriff Miller to take formal statements about the Harmon brothers' attack. After official business was concluded, Miller returned to town while Elijah stayed behind, tools in hand, to work on the corral fence. The spring sun warmed his back as he worked, occasionally aware of Dahlia's glances from where she hung laundry on the line. The children played nearby, gradually venturing closer to him as their curiosity overcame their shyness. "Can I help?" Thomas asked, picking up a stray nail from the ground. "I could use an assistant," Elijah replied, showing the boy how to hold boards in place while he hammered. Soon Lily joined them, eager to be included, while Emma contented herself with bringing pebbles she declared were special helpers for the fence. Dahlia approached with a pitcher of water and cups. "You're creating quite a workforce, Deputy." Elijah wiped his brow. "Fine helpers they are, too. Thomas here has the makings of a skilled carpenter." The boy beamed with pride, standing a little taller. "Children, let the deputy have some water and rest," Dahlia instructed. "Then you can come help me with lunch." As the children scampered off, Elijah accepted the water gratefully. "You've raised them well, Dahlia. They're good kids." "Thank you," she said, watching them run toward the house. "It hasn't been easy, but they're worth every struggle." She hesitated before adding, "We don't get many visitors out here." "They're enjoying having someone new to talk to, especially a man. They miss their father." Elijah felt a tug at his heart. "I'm happy to help any time you need it, not just with fences." Their eyes met briefly before Dahlia looked away. "That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose." "It's no imposition," he assured her. "In fact, I'd welcome the chance to spend more time out here than in town. It's peaceful." After a simple but satisfying lunch, Elijah continued working until the fence was sturdy once more. By late afternoon, he found himself reluctant to leave, even as the work was completed. "Would it be forward of me to ask if I might call on you again?" he asked as he gathered his tools. "Perhaps Sunday after church." Dahlia looked surprised but not displeased. "We would welcome your company, Elijah." And so began a pattern that would last through the spring and into the summer. Every Sunday after church services, Elijah would ride out to the Summers homestead, always bringing some small gift candies for the children, seeds for Dahlia's garden, or a book they might all enjoy. During the week, he'd find reasons to pass by, checking on their safety or offering help with chores that required a stronger back or higher reach than Dahlia possessed. The children grew to adore him. Thomas shadowed his every move, eager to learn everything from how to properly groom a horse to how to track game in the woods. Lily, more reserved at first, blossomed under his attention when he showed interest in her pressed flower collection. Little Emma simply accepted his presence, as if he'd always been part of their lives, climbing onto his lap for stories and falling asleep against his chest during quiet evenings on the porch. For Elijah, these visits became the center of his world. In Ukiah, he performed his duties diligently, earning respect for his fair but firm handling of disturbances, but his thoughts were always with the family on the edge of town. He found himself watching the clock on Sundays, counting the minutes until services ended and he could ride out to see them. Dahlia, too, underwent a subtle transformation. The worry lines between her brows softened. She laughed more freely, and Elijah often caught her humming as she worked around the homestead. Sometimes their hands would brush as they passed dishes at the table, or their eyes would meet over the children's heads, and something unspoken yet powerful would pass between them. On a particularly warm evening in July, after the children had been put to bed, Elijah and Dahlia sat on the porch steps, watching fireflies dance in the gathering darkness. The chirping of crickets filled the comfortable silence between them. "I never thought I'd feel at peace again after Robert died," Dahlia said softly, breaking the quiet. "For so long it was just struggle and worry day after day." Elijah turned to look at her profile, silvered by moonlight. "And now I find myself looking forward instead of just getting through each day." She met his gaze. "The children are happier than I've seen them in years. They adore you, you know. The feeling is mutual," Elijah replied honestly. "They're extraordinary children." "They need a man's influence in their lives," Dahlia continued, her voice carrying a hint of vulnerability. "A good man." Elijah reached over slowly and took her hand in his. When she didn't pull away, he gently laced their fingers together. "Dahlia, I need to tell you something. These past few months, coming here, being with you and the children, it's become the most important part of my life." Her hand trembled slightly in his. "Elijah, I don't want to pressure you," he continued. "I know you've been through so much. But I care deeply for you and for Thomas, Lily, and Emma. I've come to think of you all as—" He paused, searching for the right words. "As the family I never thought I'd have." Dahlia's eyes glistened with unshed tears in the moonlight. "You've become very important to us, too. The children light up whenever you arrive." "And you?" Elijah asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do you feel when I arrive?" She looked down at their intertwined hands. "Like a piece of me that was missing has returned." Emboldened by her words, Elijah gently tilted her chin up with his free hand. "May I kiss you, Dahlia?" Her answer came not in words but in the slight nod and the way she leaned toward him. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, and perfect, a promise of possibilities neither had dared hope for. As summer deepened, their relationship blossomed. Elijah spent every free moment at the homestead, helping with the harvest, teaching Thomas how to hunt, and regaling the girls with stories of his travels before settling in Ukiah. The townspeople began to take notice of the deputy's regular visits to the widow Summers, but the gossip was largely good-natured. Sheriff Miller even teased Elijah about settling down after years of wandering. By August, Elijah knew with certainty that he wanted to make their arrangement permanent. On a sun-dappled afternoon while the children were picking blackberries by the creek, he took Dahlia's hands in his beneath the old oak tree that shaded her garden. Dahlia Summers, I never expected to find love in Ukiah, but from the moment I stepped into this house, something changed in me. I love you. I love your children. I want to build a life with all of you if you'll have me. He dropped to one knee. Will you marry me? Tears spilled down Dahlia's cheeks as she nodded. Yes, Elijah. Yes. Their embrace was interrupted by excited squeals as the children, returning with their berry buckets, witnessed the proposal. They rushed forward, encircling the couple in a group hug that left everyone laughing and crying at once. "Does this mean you'll be our pa now?" Thomas asked, his young face serious. Elijah knelt to the boy's level. "If you'll have me as your pa, nothing would make me prouder." Thomas considered this solemnly before extending his hand for a manly shake. "I think that would be just fine." Lily was more exuberant, throwing her arms around Elijah's neck. "Now we can be a real family again." Little Emma, not fully understanding but caught up in the excitement, bounced on her toes. "Does this mean Deputy Elijah will live here forever and ever?" "That's exactly what it means, sweetheart," Dahlia answered, wiping happy tears from her cheeks. The wedding was set for October, when the harvest would be complete, and the weather still mild enough for an outdoor celebration. The entire town seemed to take an interest in the upcoming nuptials between their respected deputy and the hard-working widow. Women brought fabric for a new dress for Dahlia, offers to help with the cooking, and promises of flowers from their gardens. The men, not to be outdone, organized a barn raising on Dahlia's property, expanding the modest structure to accommodate a growing family. Elijah, meanwhile, poured his savings into improvements for the homestead. He purchased additional acreage adjoining Dahlia's property, hired a carpenter to add 2 rooms to the cabin, and ordered a proper iron bedstead from San Francisco as a wedding gift. Each enhancement was made with their future in mind, a future he could barely believe was becoming reality. As the wedding day approached, however, Elijah noticed a subtle change in Dahlia. Though she remained loving and engaged in their plans, a shadow occasionally crossed her features when certain topics arose. When the minister's wife asked about their plans for more children, Dahlia changed the subject. When Elijah mentioned converting one of the new rooms into a nursery someday, she grew quiet and pensive. One evening, a week before the wedding, they sat together on the new porch swing Elijah had built. The children were already asleep, and a harvest moon hung low in the sky, bathing everything in golden light. "Something's troubling you," Elijah said gently, taking her hand. "Has been for a while now. Won't you tell me what it is?" Dahlia's fingers tightened around his. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Of marrying me?" he asked, his heart constricting. "No, never that," she assured him quickly. "I'm afraid of disappointing you, of not being the wife you deserve." Confusion furrowed his brow. "Dahlia, you're everything I could ever want." "How could you possibly disappoint me?" She took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the distant hills. "When Emma was born, there were complications. The doctor in Oregon, he said I couldn't have any more children, that it would be too dangerous." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I should have told you sooner. I just couldn't bear to see your face when you learned I couldn't give you children of your own." Understanding dawned, and with it, a profound tenderness washed over Elijah. He gently turned her face toward his. "Dahlia, look at me." When her tear-filled eyes met his, he continued, "I fell in love with you, all of you. You and Thomas and Lily and Emma. You're already giving me the family I've always wanted." She whispered, "I can't have more children," her voice breaking on the words. The cowboy smiled softly and pulled her closer. "Then I'll love the ones you already have. They're already in my heart, as surely as if they were my own blood." A sob escaped her as relief flooded her features. "Are you certain? Most men want sons of their own to carry on their name." "Thomas will carry my name proudly," Elijah assured her. "And so will the girls if they choose to keep it even after they marry someday. Family isn't about blood, Dahlia. It's about love. And I have more than enough love for all four of you." She fell into his embrace then, the burden she'd carried lifting from her shoulders. "I don't deserve you, Elijah Davidson." "Now that's where you're wrong," he murmured into her hair. "It's me who doesn't deserve the blessing you four are bringing to my life. I've been wandering for so long, Dahlia. You've given me a home, not just a place, but people to belong to." Their wedding day dawned clear and crisp, the October sky a brilliant blue against the golden and russet hills surrounding Ukiah. The ceremony took place under the oak tree at the homestead, with nearly the entire town in attendance. Sheriff Miller stood as Elijah's best man. While the children played special roles, Thomas proudly carried the rings. Lily scattered flower petals, and Emma, not to be outdone, solemnly presented her mother with a bouquet of wildflowers she had gathered herself. Dahlia was radiant in a simple cream dress adorned with lace at the collar and cuffs. When Elijah saw her walking toward him, a vision in the autumn sunlight, his breath caught in his throat. This beautiful, strong woman was about to become his wife, these remarkable children his family. It seemed almost too much good fortune for one man. The minister spoke of commitment, of nurturing love through life's challenges, of building a family bound not just by blood but by choice and devotion. When it came time for their vows, Elijah took Dahlia's hands in his. "Dahlia, before I met you, I thought my life would be defined by duty and solitude. You showed me there was room for joy, for connection, for love. I promise to cherish you and the children every day of our lives together. I will protect you, provide for you, laugh with you, and comfort you in sorrow. I choose you and our family above all else now and always." Tears shimmered in Dahlia's eyes as she responded. "Elijah, you came into our lives when we needed you most, though we didn't know it yet. You brought safety, then friendship, then love so powerful it healed wounds I thought would never mend. I promise to stand by your side through whatever life brings, to honor your goodness, to nurture our family together, and to love you with all that I am, for all of my days." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Elijah kissed his bride to cheerful applause from the assembled guests. As they turned to face their community as a married couple, Emma broke free from the neighbor who had been watching her and ran to them, arms raised in a clear demand to be included. Laughing, Elijah swept her up, and Thomas and Lily quickly joined them, creating a family embrace that brought tears to many eyes. The celebration lasted well into the evening, with tables laden with food contributed by neighbors, music from fiddles and harmonicas, and dancing under strings of lanterns hung from the trees. Elijah danced with his new wife, then ceremoniously with each of his daughters, showing Lily how to stand on his boots while he guided her through the steps, and simply swinging a giggling Emma in circles. For Thomas, there was a proud moment when Elijah presented him with a hand-carved wooden box containing a pocketknife that had belonged to Elijah's father. "This is passed from father to son," Elijah told him quietly. "It's yours now, son." The boy's eyes widened. "Really?" Even though I'm not really you are really my son, Elijah interrupted firmly. From this day forward, in every way that matters. That night, after the guests had departed and the children were asleep in their beds, Elijah and Dahlia stood in the doorway of their home, truly their home now, with his belongings moved from his small room in town to join hers in the expanded cabin. "Welcome home, Mr. Davidson," Dahlia said softly, leaning against his shoulder. "I've been home since the first day I walked through this door, Mrs. Davidson," he replied, placing a kiss on the top of her head. "I just didn't know it yet." The weeks following their wedding were filled with adjustment and joy as they settled into life as a family. Elijah continued his duties as deputy, but arranged his schedule to be home most evenings. The children thrived under the stability of having both parents present, especially Thomas, who blossomed under Elijah's guidance. The boys' interest in carpentry grew, and together they built furniture for the house bookshelves, a desk for Lily who loved to draw, and a special chair sized just for Emma. Winter came early that year, bringing snowfall in November that blanketed the hills around Ukiah. The Davidson family spent evenings by the fireplace, reading stories, playing games, and planning for the spring planting. Elijah taught Dahlia how to shoot, insisting she know how to protect herself and the children if ever he was away, while she introduced him to the finer points of bread making and jam preservation. During one particularly heavy snowstorm that left them housebound for 3 days, Elijah built a snow fort with the children that rivaled the town's jail in complexity. Dahlia watched from the window, her heart full to bursting as her normally serious husband engaged in a raucous snowball fight, allowing himself to be defeated by his daughters, while Thomas valiantly defended his position. That evening, as they lay close beneath quilts in their bedroom, Dahlia traced the line of Elijah's jaw with her fingertips. "You've made them so happy. You've made us all so happy." Elijah caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. "Being needed, being loved by all of you, it's more than I ever dreamed possible." Spring arrived with renewal and change. The additional acreage Elijah had purchased allowed them to expand their garden and add more livestock. The town was growing too, with a proper schoolhouse finally completed, meaning Thomas and Lily would attend regular classes instead of the sporadic lessons previously offered in the church. On the first day of school, Elijah accompanied them, proudly introducing them as my son and daughter to the new teacher, Miss Harriet Wells, who had arrived from Boston. The children, initially nervous about being away from home, stood taller at his words, their identities as Davidsons now firmly established in their minds and hearts. "Pa," Thomas asked one evening as they worked on the spring planting, "could we change my name officially?" "I want to be Thomas Davidson, not Thomas Summers." Elijah paused, deeply moved by the request. "Is that what you want, son?" Thomas nodded solemnly. "You're my pa now. I want everyone to know it." "We'll speak to your mother," Elijah replied, squeezing the boy's shoulder, "but I would be honored." Dahlia readily agreed, and soon all 3 children legally took the Davidson name, a step that cemented what was already true in their hearts. The official adoption papers were framed and hung prominently in the main room of their home. That summer brought prosperity to their homestead. The crops thrived, their small herd of cattle increased, and Elijah's reputation as a fair and capable lawman spread throughout the county. There was talk of him running for sheriff when Miller retired the following year, a prospect that both excited and concerned him. "It would mean more responsibility," he told Dahlia as they sat on their porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the hills in magnificent hues. "More time away from home sometimes. It would also mean more stability for our family," she pointed out, And the children would be so proud. They already brag about their pa, the deputy. Elijah smiled at the thought. Whatever I decide, it won't change what matters most, being here for all of you. Dahlia rested her head against his shoulder. We know that, Elijah. You've proven your devotion 1,000 times over. As the second anniversary of his first meeting with the Summers family approached, Elijah made plans for a special celebration. He arranged for Sheriff Miller's wife to watch the children for a day and night, while he took Dahlia to the new hotel in Santa Rosa, a rare luxury for the hard-working couple. The night before their departure, after the children were asleep, Elijah presented Dahlia with a small velvet box. Inside lay a delicate gold locket. "Open it," he urged. She did, gasping softly at the tiny portraits inside, miniature renderings of Thomas, Lily, and Emma, painted by a traveling artist Elijah had commissioned months earlier during a trip to Sacramento. "Oh, Elijah," she breathed, tears welling in her eyes. "It's perfect." "Look at the back," he instructed gently. Turning the locket over, she read the engraved words, "Family is love's greatest creation. I had it made to remind you, to remind us both that what we've built together is more precious than anything that could have been," Elijah explained, helping her fasten the chain around her neck. "Our family wasn't created in the traditional way, but that makes it all the more remarkable." Dahlia touched the locket reverently. "I used to feel such shame about not being able to give you children of your own. Now I see that was never what mattered. What matters is that 5 people who might have remained alone found each other," Elijah said, drawing her into his embrace, "and created something beautiful together." Their trip to Santa Rosa was a romantic interlude that reminded them both they were not only parents but partners and lovers. They dined in the hotel restaurant, attended a theatrical performance, and enjoyed the luxury of uninterrupted time together, a rare commodity in their busy lives. Upon returning home, they found the children bursting with stories of their own adventures with Mrs. Miller, and life quickly resumed its normal rhythm. But the connection between Elijah and Dahlia had deepened further, their bond strengthened by the shared understanding that their family's unconventional beginning was its greatest strength. As the years passed, the Davidson family became a cornerstone of the Ukiah community. Elijah did indeed become sheriff when Miller retired, bringing his sense of justice and compassion to the growing town. Dahlia expanded their garden into a small business, selling preserves and vegetables to the general store. The children thrived. Thomas apprenticed with the town carpenter when not in school. Lily developed a talent for teaching younger children, and Emma, still the family's spark of joy, charmed everyone with her quick wit and kind heart. Other changes came as well. In 1883, Dahlia's sister Alina arrived from Oregon with her husband and 2 sons, settling on neighboring land and expanding the family circle. The following year, a devastating fire threatened the town, and Elijah organized the citizens into an effective firefighting force that saved most of the buildings. His leadership during that crisis earned him the respect of even the most skeptical townspeople. Through it all, the foundation of love Elijah and Dahlia had built remained unshaken. Each night, no matter how busy the day had been, they took time to talk, to share their thoughts and concerns, to simply be together. The children grew secure in the knowledge that their parents' love for each other was as steadfast as their love for them. On Emma's 10th birthday, the family held a celebration that brought together nearly everyone they knew. As twilight fell and guests began to depart, Elijah found Dahlia standing alone by the old oak tree, watching their children playing a final game with their cousins and friends. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Davidson," he said, slipping his arm around her waist. She leaned into him comfortably. I was thinking about that day, the day the Harmon brothers came. How terrified I was, not just of them, but of the future. How impossible it seemed that I could keep the children safe and fed and happy on my own. She turned to face him. And then you rode in like something from one of Emma's storybooks, Elijah chuckled. Hardly a knight in shining armor. You were to us, Dahlia said seriously. You still are. Not because you rescued us that day, but because you chose us, Elijah. You chose to love children who weren't yours by birth. You chose to build a life with a woman who couldn't give you heirs. You chose us, complete with all our complications and sorrows and joys. Best choice I ever made, he replied, his voice rough with emotion. I look at them now, at you, and I can't imagine my life any other way. Dahlia reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the laugh lines that had formed around his eyes over the years. Do you ever regret it, not having a child of your own blood? Elijah shook his head firmly. Not for a single moment. Thomas, Lily, and Emma are my children in every way that matters. They have my name, my heart, my devotion. What more could blood give us that love hasn't already provided? As if hearing their names, the children looked up from their game and waved. Elijah and Dahlia waved back, a simple gesture that carried the weight of their shared journey from strangers to family, from fear to security, from loneliness to belonging. Come on, Elijah said, taking Dahlia's hand. Let's join them for one more game before it gets too dark. Hand in hand, they walked toward their children, their steps synchronized after years of moving through life together. Behind them, the sun dipped below the hills, casting long shadows across the land they had cultivated together, not just the soil and buildings, but the rich, fertile ground of family bonds created by choice, rather than circumstance. I love you, Elijah Davidson, Dahlia said quietly as they reached the laughing group of children. And I love you, Dahlia Davidson, he replied. Today, tomorrow, and for all the days we're granted together. Emma grabbed their hands, pulling them into the circle of the game. Pa, Ma. You have to play too. And they did, laughing as they joined the children's game, their family circle complete, a family forged not by conventional paths, but by the greater power of love that recognized no boundaries of blood or birth. In the growing town of Ukiah, as the century moved toward its close and the Wild West gradually yielded to civilization, the Davidsons remained a testament to the truth Elijah had spoken years before. Then I'll love the ones you already have. Words that had created a family, healed wounds, and built a legacy that would endure long after the West was no longer wild. As the years continued to pass, the Davidson family witnessed the transformation of Ukiah from a frontier settlement to a proper town. The arrival of the railroad in 1889 brought new opportunities and challenges alike. Thomas, now 21, established his own carpentry business, specializing in fine furniture that was shipped as far as San Francisco. Lily, at 18, became the town's schoolteacher after Miss Wells returned east to care for her ailing mother. Emma, 15 and spirited as ever, showed a remarkable talent for horsemanship and dreamed of breeding the finest horses in Mendocino County. Elijah served as sheriff for 15 years, bringing stability and justice to a region once known for lawlessness. By the time he decided to retire in 1893, at the age of 47, Ukiah had grown into a respectable community with proper streets, a bank that didn't get robbed, and a reputation for being a good place to raise a family. Retirement allowed Elijah to focus on the homestead, which had expanded to a prosperous ranch. He and Thomas worked side by side, improving the buildings and increasing their livestock. Dahlia's preserve business had grown as well, with her jams and pickles winning prizes at county fairs and being sold in stores throughout Northern California. One crisp autumn day in 1894, as leaves turned golden on the oak tree where they had exchanged their vows, Dahlia found Elijah sitting on the porch, whittling a small wooden horse much like the one he had carved for Emma on that first day so many years ago. "Who's that for?" she asked, settling beside him on the swing. Elijah smiled mysteriously. "You'll see soon enough." 2 days later, they received a letter from Thomas, who was visiting his sweetheart's family in Sacramento. The news it contained brought joyful tears to Dahlia's eyes. Thomas and Catherine were engaged to be married, and they hoped to build their home on a portion of the Davidson land. "Another generation," Dahlia whispered, clutching the letter to her heart. "Our family is growing, Elijah." "That it is," he agreed, pulling out the wooden horse he'd been carving. "I thought our first grandchild might appreciate this someday." Dahlia laughed through her tears. "Always planning ahead, aren't you? When you've been blessed beyond measure, you can't help but look forward to sharing it," he replied, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. Thomas and Catherine's wedding the following spring was a celebration that rivaled Elijah and Dahlia's own. The young couple built their home on the eastern portion of the ranch, close enough for family dinners but far enough for privacy. When their first child, a son they named Robert Elijah, arrived in 1896, the wooden horse found its place in the nursery, a tangible link between generations. Lily married a few years later, choosing the town doctor's son, a thoughtful young man who shared her passion for education. They remained in Ukiah, building a house near the school where Lily continued to teach until their own children arrived. Emma, true to her independent spirit, established a horse breeding operation that gained recognition throughout California, postponing marriage until she found a man who respected her ambitions as much as he loved her. By the dawn of the new century, Elijah and Dahlia found themselves at the center of an extended family that included children, in-laws, and grandchildren, a living legacy built on the foundation of that fateful day, when a deputy had come to the rescue of a widow and her children. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1903, their children surprised them with a family portrait the first time all of them, including spouses and grandchildren, had been photographed together. Seated in the center, Elijah and Dahlia were surrounded by the family they had created together, their faces lined with the years but their eyes bright with contentment. "Did you ever imagine this?" Dahlia asked that night as they stood on their porch, gazing at the stars that had witnessed their journey. "That day when you rode up to stop the Harmon brothers, did you ever dream we would have all this?" Elijah considered the question seriously. "I knew something important was happening," he admitted. "I felt it the moment I saw you standing so bravely in front of your children. But this," he gestured toward the land, the houses where their children now lived, the legacy they had built. "This exceeded even my wildest hopes." Dahlia slipped her hand into his, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing over their years together. "When I told you I couldn't have more children, I thought I was telling you our future had limits. Instead, we created something boundless," Elijah finished. "Something that will continue long after we're gone." As if to emphasize his point, the sound of a child's laughter drifted from Thomas's house, where their grandchildren were being put to bed. It was a sound that represented everything they had built together, not just a family bound by law or blood, but a family bound by choice, by love, by the daily decision to cherish what they had created together. "I wouldn't change a single moment," Dahlia said softly. "Not one step of our journey." Elijah turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. In the silver moonlight, he could still see traces of the young widow he had fallen in love with in the curve of her smile, the steadiness of her gaze, the strength that had never wavered through all their years together. "Nor would I," he replied. "From the moment you whispered, 'I can't have more children,' and I said then, 'I'll love the ones you already have,' our path was set. And what a glorious path it has been." They stayed there on the porch until the moon rose high. Two people who had found in each other not just love, but the chance to create something enduring, a family that defied conventional boundaries, a legacy of love that would ripple outward through generations, yet unborn. In the gentle California night, surrounded by the evidence of their shared life, they stood together as they had for 25 years, their love as strong and true as the day they had first acknowledged it beneath the oak tree that still stood sentinel over the Davidson homestead. And in houses nearby, their children and grandchildren slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they were part of something remarkable, a family born not from obligation but from choice, nurtured by a love that had recognized no limitations, only possibilities. In the wild frontier of Ukiah, California, Elijah and Dahlia Davidson had built not just a home or a ranch, but a living testament to the power of choosing love, day after day, year after year, creating a legacy that would endure long after the West was tamed, and the frontier became just a memory in the pages of history.